Hello, Gareth here. So I've just been for a walk by my river, my local river, and it's a beautiful day now. It was a bit cloudier early on. So I walk by the river every day and I really enjoy it. And today's painting is a painting of that river. So maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, not so long ago, I went to the river with my drone and I took it up and took a few photos, which hopefully you can see here. And today I'm going to do a painting of this river from one of these drone shots. And actually I've already done it, if I'm being honest, and it's here, so I will show you. So here you go. This is my local river, and I normally, what side? Maybe I walk along here. So this is a Japanese river, so it's a bit different to rivers in England. It's got very big embankments, and it's also got islands and mud flats in the middle, because Japanese rivers are very wide and shallow. And because this is Japan, there are many mountains. I think 90% of Japan is mountainous. So there are a few things that I changed. For example, they've cut down nearly all the trees by the river, but I decided to add some. So I do play around with things like that. So anyway, I'll put this somewhere safe, just a minute. So anyway, in this video, you're going to watch me paint that picture, and I will give some commentary about, basically my process, what I did, maybe what I was thinking, if I was thinking. And also there's going to be like, not a musical version, there's going to be like another version which is without me giving commentary, because you might prefer that. And I've got some lovely instrumental music on that one. So there'll be a link below, and you can click on that and then listen to that version if that's the kind you prefer. So let's begin, because I can't think of anything else to talk about, and I am quite a camera shy person. So let's begin. So first of all, we do a very simple drawing. One of the most difficult parts of the drawing is the edge of the bank. You don't want it to look artificial. You want curves, and it's not easy to do. Then that's my horizon line. And then here I'm doing the trees and the edge of the riverbank. I made the trees too big, so I did them again, and a little bit smaller. Now for the urban area, the buildings, I only do a few marks, that's all. So now I'm beginning with the first wash, and that's blue, turquoise blue, cobalt turquoise blue, then yellow ochre, and I mix them in together. And then this is the bank, and this is the winter grass, and I use yellow ochre again, one of my favourite colours, and a touch of alizarin crimson. So I'm using a mop brush, because you can cover a lot of space very quickly with a mop brush. It holds a lot of paint. And I'm just doing a slightly stronger mix. In the foreground area. which creates a stronger sense of perspective. It's dried, as you can see, it's dried a lot. It's really faded. So now I'm working on the river, and the river in the distance is a light blue colour, and once again I'm using that cobalt turquoise blue. I'll just call it turquoise from now on because it's a bit of a mouthful. And then there's a white gap where the sunlight is hitting the water and creating a shimmering effect. And then below that we've got another blue, but it's darker blue. In fact, it looks a bit grey. So for that, I think I used, maybe it was the turquoise blue and alizarin crimson and probably a touch of yellow ochre, which is what makes it go from a purple to a more of a grey colour. And I'm just strengthening that mix. So it's the same mix, but I'm just making it stronger. And I've painted over the islands in the middle of the river, but later on I'll wipe them out with some tissue. And also if I go over the edges of the riverbank, then I can just wipe them off with a tissue. So a tissue is very essential in watercolor painting. So you can just wipe away marks that go over an edge and then just repaint them. And here I go with wiping out the islands. But to be honest, I did this painting again and I painted around the islands the next time. And I think that's a better way. So I'm spraying this now to keep it wet. And it's so important to have a spray bottle. Now I'm doing the mountains. And I think this is a similar mix as what I was using for the river. Basically a blue, alizarin crimson and a touch of yellow ochre. So maybe I add a touch more red to this to make it slightly more purple, I'm not sure. And then I use that for the city area. So you can see how with the mop brush I can cover a lot of space very quickly. It really is a wonderful brush. And I'm spraying it to keep it wet and workable. So what I did was I allowed it to dry a little so it became just damp. So what I can do now is add some darker paint within that wet paint, and hopefully it won't spread out too much because it's only slightly damp. And now I'm doing the hills in the distance and some of the darker areas within the city. So it just makes it look more realistic. But I'm doing it all very roughly. So it really is very loose, a loose style of painting that I'm doing. That's dried. Now I'm using just pure water there and a flat brush. I could use a mop. And basically what I'm trying to do is soften that mountain ridge line by going over it with pure water. Now I'm doing the riverbank again, and I'm trying to just make it a bit more, make the colour a little bit more vibrant. Especially at the bottom. Yeah, and once again I'm going even thicker and even more vibrant. So this is yellow ochre and alizarin crimson. There might be a touch of blue in it, which will make it look a bit darker and browner. So I'm spraying that again just to keep it workable. And now I'm painting the islands in the middle of the river. And I'm using my pointed oval. So that's a wonderful brush when you're trying to paint something intricate, and edges, keeping edges is really important. It's really good for that kind of thing. And now I'm basically doing the same mix of yellow ochre and alizarin crimson, but there's some blue in there, probably phthalo blue. And this is for the shadow areas in the riverbank, and also the shadow areas of the embankment. You get very high embankments on a Japanese river. And some of these shadow areas I'm adding weren't really there, but I added them because I just thought it made the overall painting look more interesting. And I'm painting these islands once again because if you look at the colour, it's not as vibrant as the riverbank colour. Oh, not yet. I will be doing that in a minute. I was doing the shadow areas. So now I'm doing that. Okay, it's dried, and now once again, this time with a mop, I'm going over the background with pure water. Not too wet, but I'm just hoping to soften that mountain ridge. And I think it has become a little softer. And I'm now painting the winter trees with a liner brush. I really like these winter trees. I think they look so beautiful. And I'm adding some shadows to them, all with a liner brush. And just doing a bit more of shadow areas by the riverbank. Okay, so I made a mistake here. So this is titanium white, and it's mixed with a purple, something like turquoise blue and alizarin crimson. But there's too much purple in the white mix, and so when this dries, it's very faint, too faint. So I have to paint it again later on. But as you can see, you need just a few marks, and suddenly the imagination supplies the rest, and it just looks like an urban area, which is marvelous. So now I'm doing the footpath. by the riverbank. There's two of them actually, a high one and a low one. And this is titanium white mixed with yellow ochre and probably a bit of alizarin crimson. And I really enjoyed doing this. I love these lines. I think they're beautiful. And I like the dry brush effect as well. So it was quite a thick mix, and that's why I'm getting that dry brush effect. Now this is where I went wrong. I did the trees too early, and now I'm trying to paint around them, and it's not working. So here I go again, trying to paint between those branches. I eventually just give up and just paint across the whole lot. Here I go. But I can repaint the trees later on. And I'm just correcting that edge there with some water and removing a bit of the white paint there. It had gone into the grey area and I didn't want it there. Now I'm doing the bottom of the river. I thought the river looked too bland, so I'm making it much darker at the bottom, and I'm using a mix of phthalo blue, alizarin crimson. There might be a touch of yellow ochre in there as well. And slowly as I go up, I make the mix a bit more watery. But the most important thing is that I keep spraying, because this keeps the paint wet and workable. And this is especially important when you can't paint quickly. So here I'm having to paint between those two islands, and I have to be very careful, and that slows me down a lot. And so I have to keep spraying and keeping the paint wet. And you can see I'm using my pointed oval brush, which I think as you look, you can see how well you can use it for painting around edges. It's perfect for that. Whereas like a mop brush would be far more difficult. And then at the top here, I'm just trying to soften this. So I think now I wash my brush out, then I wipe it on the rag. Wiping on the rag is very important. And then I just blend in that top part with where it's white paper. And then it's dried. And what I'm doing now is painting the bridge, and I'm using a round brush. And if you can see, that white paint underneath is interfering a bit. And what I can do, you just saw me do it there, was get a tissue and wipe it up, and that removes some of the white paint, so you can get rid of it in that way. And then at the ends of the bridge where you've got the fresh paint and the dried paint, you can use your finger just to blend that in. Oh, and I'm doing the post now. The important with the, oh, there's me using my finger to blend the paint in. But the important thing with the post for the bridge is to keep the space between them the same. That's so critical. So don't rush, take your time and get that distance between each one the same. With the shadows, it's more or less the same mix, but I might have added a bit more of the turquoise blue, light blue. And the shadow has to follow the land. So where it's the river, the shadow is very low, but then on the river bank it's higher. And at the very ends, you've got this not vertical, diagonal embankment, so you need a diagonal shadow. So it's important to get those things right. And once again, I'm painting the island in the middle, because it's not the same colour as the riverbank grass. Okay, so I'm going and doing the background again, but this time I'm using a mix of titanium white and water, and you can really see now that white paint, and what it's doing is giving a hazy effect, and I think it looks really good. So they really look like distant mountains now. And we have that beautiful hazy effect. So now I'm once again doing the rooftops and basically the highlights in this built-up area, and I'm using titanium white with a touch of yellow ochre because I think pure white is too much. It needs to be a bit more of a cream colour, and it's just amazing how you only need a few touches of this, indicating rooftops, a few curvy lines for roads, and then sometimes just a thin line for a building in the distance, and it just looks beautiful. I really enjoyed doing that. And now I'm doing the river in the distance. So I hope you can see how useful white paint is, and the beautiful effects that you can achieve with it. And now I'm doing the bridge, and those little dots, that's just to indicate the tops of cars. So I'm not sure if it really actually looked like that, but when you look at the painting, that's what you get the impression of, that those must be cars. So it works, and that's really all that matters, as far as I'm concerned anyway. And I'm back to the riverbank, and I'm making it darker again. So it's that same mix of yellow ochre, alizarin crimson, and some blue, probably phthalo blue, which makes it a bit brown, a bit more of a browny colour. So the picture is starting to come together. Although those islands in the middle, the colour still isn't quite right. Yeah, and I'm going even darker with the riverbank in the foreground. It creates a sense of perspective because colours in the distance get fainter, whereas closer up they become stronger and more vibrant. So that's one way of emphasising or making the perspective look real, or creating a sense of perspective. That's what I mean to say. And I'm doing that island again. I keep trying. So I'm doing that river again because I just couldn't get it dark enough at the bottom. I really tried, but when it dried off, it just dried too much. Well, became too faint. So once again, I'm using something like phthalo blue, alizarin crimson, and a touch of yellow ochre. Of course, that light blue above, that's the turquoise blue. I'm using that colour to fade it off. And as you can see, I keep spraying, keep it wet and workable. And I'm using my, and here maybe it's just water at the top just to blend it in. And I'm using my pointed oval brush, and as you can see, I know I repeated this a few times, but it is important. It's so good for painting around edges. You can see how well it paints around edges. It is important to get the right tools so that you're really helping yourself and increasing your chances of doing a good painting. And I did a bit of a dry brush effect here. And yeah, I just intuitively decided, oh, let's do that. And I think it looks good. So that might happen sometimes. You might just get an inclination, an urge to do something. And it's probably a good idea to do it. Although it might go wrong, so what? It's good to try things. And here's the dried version, and it's not so faded this time, which is wonderful. And I'm wetting the riverbank. So that was just water there. And I'm making it even darker. Normally I don't have to paint like this, like to build up in layers almost like this. Normally I never paint like that, but with this picture it just happened like that. And I keep spraying, wet and workable. Wow, I'm doing the whole lot. And you'll notice on the right hand side bank I went over the footpath, but I'll tidy that up in a minute. Already I went over it with some tissue which got rid of some of the paint. But now that footpath really sticks out, doesn't it? And yet I'm doing the shadow areas again. So once again it's yellow ochre, alizarin crimson and phthalo blue. And that brush I'm using, the pointed oval, look at the beautiful shapes it gives me. Really nice edges that work well. Yep, just a few little dots in the distance. Understatement is important with things in the distance. And these islands in the middle, putting some shadow areas in there. And it's really coming together nicely. Goodness me, it looks like I'm doing the river again. And yeah, first I wet it, and then I'm going in with a really dark mix, and it's kind of towards the purple. It's mostly phthalo blue and alizarin crimson. There might be a touch, just a touch of yellow ochre. But I think it works well. And there you can see that's pure turquoise blue. So maybe I got tired of doing this river again and again, and I just started to use pure colours. And then above it is maybe just water on my brush, and I'm just blending that together. And I think that looks nice now, but it took a lot of effort. Okay, so now I'm doing these trees, and I think I didn't bother to correct the path. Maybe I thought it was okay. So I'm using my liner brush, and this dark mix is the same phthalo blue as the river, alizarin crimson, and a touch of yellow ochre. So I have to be careful though to get the perspective there. They are getting smaller as you go away. It's obvious, but when you start painting, it's surprising how you just forget. And then I'm doing a few shadows there, and I'm using a brownie mix. So basically phthalo blue, alizarin crimson, and quite a bit of yellow ochre. And I think I'm using the same thing for these trees. In reality, there aren't so many trees now by the river because they've been doing a lot of work by the river and cutting down a lot of these trees. So yeah, this is ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and yellow ochre. And the trees really help though, so that's why I added them. And I'm just doing a few shadows here, and there's a lot of turquoise blue in that shadow because I wanted it to stick out a bit. So it's mostly turquoise blue, then maybe a touch of alizarin crimson and a tiny touch maybe of yellow ochre. And I decided to add some figures with my liner brush. I had real difficulty doing that figure there. I had to do him a few times. They're really just short stubby marks, like lines, vertical lines, short vertical lines, and then I'm just adding some shadows, and there's a lot of turquoise blue in those shadows, but it just brings the whole thing to life a bit more. And I think that's about it. So I hope this commentary was okay. Oh no, I haven't finished yet. I'm now using some white, titanium white. There might be a touch of yellow ochre in there, and it's because by the river there were a few highlights around the island. Oh, I'm doing the path now as well, around the islands and also the edges of the riverbanks. So there you go. I hope my commentary was okay. And here is the final painting. So I like to do these zoom outs, and wow, it looks beautiful. I love the colour of that winter grass. It's so beautiful. So there you go, finished. I really hope you enjoyed it. And finally, I thought I would show you some of the other paintings I did of this river. So I tend to do more than one painting of a subject, and I try and play around with things. I don't know why I made this island green. So yep. And then I did a darker version. So I was very interested also in the pattern of the sparkling light across the surface of the river. So, and I did a portrait format, so that was very interesting. And then maybe this is my favorite. So with this one, I went very, very dark, but I think it looks beautiful. So I think that one is my favorite and the most successful. I also did a really big one, so I don't know why, but like that. So I did quite a few. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed it, and next time I'll be maybe talking about this painting. So this is where I've got my psychedelic trees. They've got a slightly purplish look, and then a green look and a grey look, but it's a lot of fun. I really like my sun. It's really powerful. So anyway, that really is everything, and if you've listened all the way until the end, then I want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and hopefully see you again next time. Bye for now. Bye. Oh.